What's up 3D designers, welcome to this new video. Today I actually made a list of Blender quick tips that I want to show you, and this video is mainly going to be for beginners, so if you are a more advanced Blender user I think you will hopefully know all those tips already that I will show you, but nevertheless if you want to you can of course watch them and see if there's something that you didn't already know about Blender. So without further ado, I would say we can just jump into Blender and I will show you those quick tips. Okay, so the first tip that I have for you guys today is to use the Node Wrangler add-on. And for that you're gonna come up here to Edit, Preferences, and you will head on to Add-ons and search for Node Wrangler. And you can see it right here. I have it already ticked on. If you don't have it, you will have to turn it on first. So if I turn this off, so it will look something like this for you. So you can turn this on. Now you have the Node Wrangler, and I can show you really quick what you can do with it. So I have an example scene right here, and in this scene I will change from object to world, so we can see the world right here. And what we can do with the Node Wrangler is to actually click on the image that we, for example, have for HDRI texture. So I have loaded in an HDRI right here from HDRI Haven, and you can click on it and say Control T, and what this gives you is a mapping node and a texture coordinate node. So you can, for example, rotate your HDRI with that really quickly. So if you want to rotate it along the Z rotation, you can like type in 90. Now you can see it rotated the HDRI. So that's just a really useful little tip. So there's actually another very handy function for the Node Wrangler, and you can just hover on a node that you have, and you can click Control Shift and just left click. And that means you get this viewer node. In this case it's not the best example, but you can always just highlight a node without having to reconnect all the other nodes. So if you only want to highlight something that's very early on in the node tree, you would have to plug that in there, and this way you can just highlight it and Control Shift click, and that way it just highlights what this node right here is doing, and it's plugging it directly into the surface. And if you want to get back to the normal arrangement of your nodes, you can just click the last node in your node chain before the output and just click Control Shift left click again. So that's it for the first tip. So the next tip that I have for you is how you can use depth of field in the normal solid view, because as you can see right here in my example, I have the render mode on, and of course this way you can see that the background is very blurred because I have I focused on the sphere right here. So I can show you that if I go into the camera settings, I turned on depth of field, and as a focus object I selected the sphere. But now if you go into solid mode, where is our depth of field? It's not there. And a simple fix for that is to just come up here to this little drop down menu and just select depth of field right here, and now you will have depth of field in your scene as well. So I modified the example scene a little bit. Now you can see it better. So in the viewport our depth of field is actually also working. So if you don't always want to have turned on your normal preview shading mode or the rendered mode, you can just go into solid mode and also see the depth of field, which I think is a very good function, especially when you're working with larger scenes where you have a lot more polygons and intricate objects. So for the next tip, I also prepared a little scene right here. As you can see, I just have a normal PBR material. In this case, the material is a concrete material, and I used the height node that was delivered with the material and plugged it into a displacement node, which is then going into the displacement output of our material. But as you can see, it looks like we have some displacement, but if we go to the side right here, we don't actually have real displacement. And why is that? So First of all, you could say, okay, I don't have any subdivisions, that's why it doesn't work, so let's subdivide this a couple of times. But as you can see, that didn't change anything either. So what you have to do right here, if you can't see any displacement, is you have to go into the material tab right here. You have to go into settings, and there is this little checkbox that says displacement bump only. So it won't let you display real displacement. And for that you have to go in here and either check displacement only if you only want to see displacement, or displacement and bump if you also have something, a bump node plugged into this normal input right here. So let's check this to displacement only, and now you can see something happened and we have real displacement, and now we can just play with those settings and subdivide our plane a lot more, and you have like this real displacement. But also one thing that you have to note, this displacement is also only working in the rendered mode, and in the preview you will also only get to the bump version. So the next tip that I have for you is actually a modeling tip, and for that I would just create a simple cube, and let's say we want a hole inside of the cube, so we want this cube basically to be hollow on the one side. And the way that we would do this is to select both of those sides in edit mode and maybe inset them a little bit, and now we want basically a tunnel from this face to this face. And the way that you could do it, which takes a lot more time, is to delete those faces and then just manually select the edges and fill it, and select the edges and fill it, and so on, and do this for all the other faces. But a really simple way that you can also do it is to select both of those faces and then just hit F3 to bring up the search bar and type bridge edge loops, and you can see it right here, Control E, bridge edge loops, and once you click that, it automatically does the job for you, and that's a very handy tool, and it helps you to speed up your workflow a lot. So the last tip that I've got for you is a shading tip. So let's say you have a really simple object, or could also be a more complex object, but in this case we are just going to work with our normal cube. And let's say I want to shade this smooth. So if you would have another object and you also want to shade it smooth, you would get something like this. And you are probably wondering, okay, why can't I even see the edges right here, and the corners aren't visible? And there's also a very simple quick fix for that, and you will just go into this icon over here and go to normals and auto smooth, and this just means that those faces are basically shaded properly. And you could also play with the angle sometimes if you have like more complex objects, that actually makes a difference, but you can just play around with this until you find the right settings for that. And if this doesn't work, there's also a modifier that helps you with it. You can, for example, apply a weighted normal modifier that works also for more complex models very well. And with that being said, I think we are already at the end of this tutorial. I really hoped you liked it and you learned something from it. And I think the next video is going to be a follow-up video to this one, and I'm going to show you 5 additional tips. And yeah, thanks for watching.